Of all the late night hosts, Jimmy Kimmel is probably the best interviewer. And maybe that's why he himself is such a great interview. You know a lot.
I do. Sometimes I know too much.
When I met him at his studio in LA, he was open and warm and funny about everything from being a father, he has kids ranging from ages 2 to 25, to being an altar boy growing up in Las Vegas.
I'm probably going to hell, let's be honest.
Here it is, the Jess Cagle interview. So Jimmy Kimmel, where are we right now?
I don't know. I have no idea where we are.
No idea.
I don't know who these people are. You've got men with cameras pointing. We're in, I guess this is my green room. This is the green room where I'm supposed to relax with my friends, but the truth is it's more like a sweatshop. We're building costumes up here. When I say we, I don't mean me. I'm not doing any actual work, but and it's supposed to be kind of swanky and hip, but you can see we have big plastic garbage pails around, and
yeah,
it's not that great. But
there's a foot ashtray nearby.
Yeah.
We'll get a shot of that.
Yeah, you'll have to get that. That was a gift given to me. It is a model of one of our former writers' actual foot, and it is the most monstrous foot a human being has ever had. It's like the foot they put on Frankenstein.
I'm sure he was proud of his big feet.
Well, Frankenstein was, but not Rick.
So you're doing the Emmys again.
I am. I'm hosting the Emmys, yeah.
Why did you want to come back for a second time?
Well, it's one of those things where it's a lot of work, and it's in addition to already doing my show. So once you agree to do it, you're like, why did I do this? But on the other hand, you really want to be asked to do it because it's insulting if you're not. And so I said, yeah, of course I wanted to do it, and I do want to do it. I just don't want to do it. You know what I mean?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of preparation.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on.
So how is getting up there in front of that room, in that crowd, different than getting up and doing your opening monologue on the show?
In a way, it's better because I know almost everybody in the crowd. I mean, these are people that have all been on my show, and they also know the camera's on them, so they have to pretend to be enjoying what I'm doing because they know I will find those clips and punish them somehow in the future if they don't.
Obviously, I'm not going to ask any of the material that you've done for the Emmys, but what are the big news stories right now that you're getting the biggest kick out of? Obviously, Trump is a big one.
Well, there's Trump. Sometimes the news stories are too big to deal with. Sometimes people are like, all right, enough already. This is a special night. I don't want to hear about that. But I'm sure there will be something related to the election, to Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. There will be some kind of reference to it. And it turns out last time I hosted the Emmys was also an election year, and it was also right before the election. Also, the Olympics had just happened. So, but the weird thing with the way the news works is in 2 weeks, things could be totally different. I mean, we really don't know.
Exactly. That's what's so weird. I mean, you could prepare and prepare and prepare, but who knows what is going to happen to Ryan Lochte in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I actually do know what's going to happen to Ryan Lochte. I think he's getting an honorary doctorate from Yale.
I'm sure that's in the cards. for
yeah,
Mr. Lochte.
You really have to be prepared to throw everything away and grab onto something else because you don't want to do anything that seems dated.
What are you going to do after the show?
After the show, it's a funny thing because we'll have a party after the show, but I just want to go home and collapse. You prepare so much for something like this that just physically you feel like all the blood is drained out of your body or something. I remember last time I went to the party, I was like, oh God, I kind of have to stay, but I want to go home. Does it sort of eradicate all the pressure and nervousness of being nominated because hosting is just so much worse? Honestly, and I know it sounds like whatever, I never feel any pressure about being nominated because I really don't. I mean, it'd be great if we won. I don't think we're going to win, and I don't really care if we win or not. So I don't have that typical nervousness, where I'm like, oh God, this is my shot. I'm more nervous about hosting.
Why don't you think you're going to win?
I just don't think. I have a pretty good gauge of what kinds of shows win these awards and what the current mood is, and I just don't see that happening.
So what's your prediction in your category?
I think John Oliver will win our category. I think he's very funny, and I think he's hitting on serious subjects, and I think that's the kind of thing that seems award worthy.
Would he be your vote?
Well, no, I voted for myself.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, if you're not, who is?
That's what I told my mother.
When you're actually sitting there with everybody looking at you in that room, is it tougher to be irreverent if they're actually in the room and you can see their face, or is it make it better for you?
No, it's more
there?
fun.
Yeah.
It's definitely more fun. And also the people with whom I'm actually friendly are in the most danger usually. I mean, because if I know they can take a joke, that works against them. Being a good sport is the worst thing you could be.
Let's talk about growing up
Yes.
in Brooklyn.
Did you grow up in Brooklyn?
I did not grow up
Then
in
why
Brooklyn.
would we talk about growing up
I want to
in
hear
Brooklyn?
about you growing up in Brooklyn.
Me growing up
but
in Brooklyn.
more than that, I want to talk about, so you were born in Brooklyn.
I was, yeah.
How was that?
So it went well. I mean, I lived, I survived. I went to public school. I went to PS 236. I had a lot of classmates that I still now see on Facebook, and I had a pretty good childhood. I was thinking about this the other day. I think I had a pretty solid childhood as far as they go.
And then it was so funny because this is all a build up to me asking you about living in Las Vegas, because you moved there when you were 9, and it was funny on the show today, you actually talked about how weird it was growing up in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it was during the commercial break. I was talking to the audience, and a woman there in the audience said she worked at a church, and I was an altar boy when I was a kid, and I was talking about the fact that at the end of the weekend, the priest, who was and still is a good friend of mine, we would gather the money, and then we would go to Binion's Horseshoe downtown, and we'd dump all the money in the change sorter, and then they would give us, I think maybe they gave us a check or something like that, and they'd just give us a check, so we didn't have to count the money ourselves or take it down to the bank. It's one of the great perks of living in Las Vegas.
And was your life, except for the occasional trip to the casino to change the church money, was it sort of a normal life, or were you hanging out on the Strip? It just seems like such a weird place to live.
It is a weird place to grow up, and it's a weird place to be a kid. It is not such a weird place as much as a strange place to play Little League, I guess, But you don't realize it until you move, and everybody tells you how weird it was. But I saw, and I hand to God, Sammy Davis Jr. buying pants in the boys department at Saks Fifth Avenue. I saw Liberace at the Mayfair Market in the middle of the night wearing a hairnet buying meat.
Wow.
These are the sorts of things that people don't see in Chicago.
I once went to a gym in
Me too. One time.
One time.
I hated it.
And it was in Las Vegas. I was there for work, and I was in the shower, and I look over, and it was Siegfried.
Are you kidding me?
He looked like a beautiful piece of leather.
Can I tell you something? I feel like you're setting me up in a way, because I used to go to a gym with my band leader, Cleto, called Camelot in Las Vegas, and every time we were there, Siegfried was there.
No, I know, I wasn't setting you up. That really happened.
And he never really worked out. He'd do 4 sit-ups, and then he'd go kind of lounge in the steam room in the hot tub.
That's what he was doing.
And well, I didn't understand what exactly was going on until I became older and figured it out. But that's a very strange shared experience. Yeah.
Well, maybe a lot of people have shared that experience in gyms across the nation.
I'm guessing they do. Yeah.
Now, we know your family kind of from the show.
Yeah.
We have members of your family. What were they like when you were growing up?
Terrible.
Just awful, abusive?
No, they're great, but also terrible. And they're great and terrible at the same time. But that terribleness has translated into humor for me. My Aunt Chippy, for instance, is someone that is a very loud woman. She's very, I wouldn't say she's mean, because deep down inside she's not mean, but you'd think she was mean if you just met her. She is, she's
got a
from
short
Brooklyn,
fuse.
Smokes like a chimney, very short fuse, loves yelling at people. And I didn't know she was funny. I used to just kind of dread going over there because there was yelling all the time, and it's just like I just didn't want any part of it. But then my buddy Cleto, he lived across the street, and I said, "Oh yeah, my Aunt Chippy's coming over," and he's like, "Oh, can I come?" And I said, "Why would you want to come?" He's like, "Oh, she's hilarious, her and my Uncle Frank," and that's when I understood that to other people, like, it was funny, whereas for me, I was just being beaten with a wooden spoon.
At some point, you decided it would be a really good idea to provoke them and bring out what would potentially be, for a kid, the most embarrassing aspects of their personality.
Yeah. I started loading my Aunt Chippy cigarettes with little explosives when I was about 12 years old. I just did. She was my, I wouldn't say muse, but really my tormentee. You know, I did so many things to her when I was a kid because her reactions were just always beautiful, screaming, yelling, fireworks. And to this day, it continues. And now I'm fortunate enough to have a TV show, and I can, like I did, go to her house while she's at work and paint her house green and orange, and then just have cameras hidden in the bushes for when she returns from work, and the fireworks. And it's just, for me, to be able to waste that kind of money on a stupid thing like that is the best thing about the job.
You seem like a very sweet guy.
I am.
There's something somewhat sadistic.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah, yes.
About tormenting these poor people.
I'm probably going to hell, let's be honest. But it's, you know what, it's, there are two groups in my family. There are people that kind of, I wouldn't say deserve it, but they crave it. My Aunt Chippy loves to yell at people. She loves it. So I do give her an excuse to yell, real excuses to yell at people. She came to my office last week and told me a story about getting on the flight to visit. She's like, I got on the flight and I had the we get her the ticket on Southwest. She likes to fly into Burbank, and she's like A3, which is a good group to be in. And this woman says, "What's your number?" She was insinuating that my Aunt Chippy was in the wrong place in line. And she's like, "It's A3." And the woman doesn't say anything. And my aunt goes, "What's your number?" And she won't show it to her. So now my Aunt Chippy waits, and she gets up to the front, and she spies this woman's number. He's like B11. She's not supposed to be in the thing. And she tells the gate agent, "If you don't send that woman to the back of the line, I will scream so goddamn loud, the police will come." And sure enough, the woman came up, and there's a note back of the line. And then the woman passed right by my Aunt Chippy on the flight, and she was as happy as she could be. Sick people, you know.
Then, when did all of this sort of translate to you're going to be a performer?
I'm still waiting for that to happen. It was, I started in radio, and I wanted to be an artist, a cartoonist, or draw comic books or something when I was a kid. And when I got into high school, I was working at a clothing store called Miller's Outpost, the fashion answer. And this guy worked with me, and he was a couple years older than I was. He was in college, and he was working at the college radio station. And he said, "You know, you're funny, you should be on the radio." And at that time, I knew that David Letterman had started his career in radio. Not that I was looking to be on TV, but I loved David Letterman. And I also was a Howard Stern fan. My uncle would send me cassette tapes. And so it seemed like a fun thing. And I went and I do this half-hour show on Sunday nights where I interview local, it's not really celebrities, but like the local car dealer and, you know, people that had commercials.
But you were just in high school. How did you persuade them to give you a?
Oh, I walked in and they gave it to me. It was, it was college radio, and nobody cared really.
What was your first paying job on the radio?
My first paying job on the radio was at KZOK in Seattle. It's an FM station. It was classic rock. I was 21, and I was. I always worked hard. I was always there on time. I never missed a day of work, but somehow I wound up getting fired from almost every one of my radio jobs.
You got fired a lot.
I did get fired a lot.
Michael Davies told a story, but you were cocky, and as a kid. Yeah,
I guess I was cocky. I think maybe it wasn't cockiness, but I always think people will appreciate the joke, and oftentimes I'm wrong. And like when I was in Seattle, I would make photocopies of like my boss's head, and then I would cut his head out, and I'd cut my other boss's head out, and then I'd put them on like Naked Women or something like that, and I'd make 1 million copies and put it on the cover of the station newsletter that went out to everyone. And I was like, oh, isn't this funny? And then they were mad, and I could not understand why they would be angry about it. I honestly couldn't understand it. And then they fire me, and I'd be like, wait, what did I do? Why would I be fired from this place? But I was raised in a different way. I was raised by wolves, really.
How did you end up getting to Los Angeles?
I went from, so I started in college radio in Vegas, then went to Phoenix, Arizona. I would call into radio stations. I met a guy there, a guy named Kent Voss, who made me his sidekick. We went up to Seattle. We got fired there. We were out of work for almost a year. We went to Tampa, Florida, got fired there.
Fired everywhere.
On the day I got fired, I got a job in Palm Springs, where I worked with Carson Daly. He was my intern. He was my sidekick. I worked there for 18 months. I did not get fired from that job. I left to go to Tucson, Arizona, got fired from that job, and got a job at K-Rock in LA.
Why did you get fired from Tucson?
Tucson, I got fired. It was never for ratings. It was always a sense that we were headed in different directions. Me and everybody else.
Everybody that you worked for.
Yeah.
And then K-Rock, though.
K-Rock was great. I did not get fired from that job.
And that was in Los Angeles, and that was when people in the industry really started hearing you and noticing you, and it ultimately led to television. What were you doing on the radio at that time on K-Rock that was so great?
I did a character called Jimmy the Sports Guy, and it was, the idea was I called Kevin and Bean, or the host, still the host of the show. Yeah. I would call into their show and beg them for a job, and I acted like I lived with my mother, and I had a heavy New York accent, and I love sports. I said, you don't have a sports guy, and then we did this for like 3 weeks, and then they invited me to come in. It was all fake, but I was their writer. I was the sports guy. I did Snoop Dogg on the show as one of my characters. I only have 2 characters, Snoop Dogg and Karl Malone. And I don't know, people driving into work would listen, and then every once in a while I'd get a call from somebody, like Michael Davies, for instance, asking me to come audition for something.
Sort of the big break on television was Ben Steins Money.
Yeah, When Ben Steins Money was definitely my first real show. Yeah. You know, that show, I turned down a few shows even though I had nothing going on because they sounded bad, but I said yes to this idea probably a minute into the pitch because they said, first of all, it's called Win Ben Steins Money. And I was like, okay, who's Ben Stein? He said, you know the guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Bueller. I was like, yeah. Well, people will play against him and try to win his money. He's very smart. And I said, well, that seems like a good idea and something that I could do. So they auditioned me. Originally, there wasn't supposed to be a co-host. It was just going to be Ben against the contestants. But then they realized someone needed to read the questions. So they auditioned me, and right away they hired me. I mean, they didn't audition anybody else.
And this was where you met Adam Carolla.
I met Adam Carolla at K-Rock, actually.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, he was my boxing instructor when I started at K-Rock. He called into the radio station. I was having an on-air boxing match with another guy on the show, and I met Adam, and we became friendly, and then he put him on the show, and then he went to do Loveline, and that went to TV. I was doing Win Ben Steins Money, and we decided to do the Man Show together, and we pitched it, and Michael Davies helped us pitch it to ABC, and it wound up on Comedy Central, and you know, trampoline sales skyrocketed.
And when did you guys come up with the name Jackhole Productions?
Jackhole is a curse word that I came up with when I was on the radio. I was frustrated because it just always seemed silly to me that certain words were okay and certain words weren't. So I mixed jack and asshole and made Jackhole, and I would just refer to people as jackholes, and it just became a thing, you know. And so then when we started our company, we named it that.
Crank Yankers.
Yeah.
This idea that, okay, we're going to do a show about prank phone calls, and it's going to be puppets, with great comedians doing the voices.
Yeah.
Who came up with it? Was one of the greatest ideas I think that was ever put on television.
Yeah, I came up with that idea. I did a lot of crank calls when I was on the radio. It was one of the things I did a lot, and it's really what I was born to do. It's really more than anything. Making crank calls is my forte. So I was working at Comedy Central, and I had dinner with a guy named Bill Hillary, and I had this idea. First of all, I wanted to call it prank puppets, but the lawyers, for some reason, found that unacceptable. If we use the word prank, we'll get sued. So crank anchors, I wrote down a whole bunch of words and came up with crank anchors, but I wanted to do it as claymation. That was my original thought, that it would be fun as claymation, but it was too expensive. So then we decided, make it look like Sesame Street and have these cute puppets saying horrible things. It would have some real kind of impact, and then we just asked a bunch of our comedian friends to be a part of it, and I think some of the first viral videos came out of that show. Tracy Morgan and Wanda Sykes were two of and Special Ed, which is a guy named Jim Florentine, those three characters really broke out online before the show became popular.
There's a Wanda Sykes bit where she calls the garage and says, "I just got my car back and there's a giant turd in the back seat."
Right.
And it is one of the funniest things you could ever hope to see. It's genius.
It's especially funny because it's a little bit different from your typical crank call, because at a certain point, the guys on the other end start laughing, and she starts laughing, and then everyone's laughing. And at that point, it's not even a crank call anymore. It's just people laughing at something, but it is, that's one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one. The TV business now, I mean, so much of what people see of Jimmy Kimmel Live is through clips, obviously.
Most of it.
Yeah, and on the YouTube channel. What has been detrimental about that to late night television, and also how has that made it better?
Well, I think what has made it better is that there are more people watching late night television than ever before, and not just in the United States, all around the world. It's crazy to me when I go to another country and get stopped on the street. Like, how do you know? YouTube, and so that part has been great. It raises awareness, and really just from a creative standpoint, to do something that you're proud of, and then you obviously want as many people to see it as possible. Business aside, you just want people to see it because you worked hard on it. So that's the good part. The bad part is, I remember when I was a kid watching David Letterman, if I knew like Shirley MacLaine was on, this was event television for me, and there was no way I was going to miss it. And that's gone now, because you can go to bed, you can wake up the next day, and it's going to be right there. You know that you're going to be able to watch the best bits from any of the late night shows everywhere the next morning. So it definitely cuts into your television viewership. But ultimately, we probably have, people talk about the huge audiences Johnny Carson had, and he did have a huge audience on television every night, but if you combine all these late night shows, we dwarf that when you look at the online viewing.
I think it's also in this, like right now, I think people think of this as another golden age of late night television. And I think a big part of that is you guys just have to work so, and women as well now, but have to work so hard to cut through the clutter. You really have to, it's not appointment television, you have to grab their attention.
We need to have a meeting to reel it back in, I think. I want to get everyone together and go, listen. First of all,
it's too hard. 5
nights a week is for the birds, and just get everybody to cut it back. Like, everyone's allowed one viral video a week, and that's it. But it's turned into a lot more than just sitting. It used to be that late night television was invented because it was cheap. You could get big stars to come on and you pay them a union scale. But now it's big productions and skits, and people are rapping and lip syncing and driving around in cars, and it's expensive.
Speaking of the late night hosts, let's talk about the competition. So just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when I say their names.
Okay.
Jimmy Fallon.
Rapist. No. That's always the first word that comes to my mind all the time. Jimmy Fallon is, okay, the first word. The first word, he's extremely likable, both on camera and off. I happen to like him a lot.
Stephen Colbert.
Again, a predator, dangerous individual. I love Stephen, very smart, and one of the most decent people you'll ever meet. You know.
James Corden.
Now, I don't know James that well. I met him a couple of times, but super talented and seems like a very lovely guy.
Carson Daly.
Carson Daly is like my little brother, so I hesitate to say anything nice about him. But, you know, Carson is a funny guy because a lot of people think he's a douchebag. And if I had to pick one person in my life that is the opposite of a douchebag, it would be Carson.
It's true. It's true.
It is
I think
true,
it was
right?
he dated Tara Reid, and then it was all over.
Yeah. That was a confusing time, but it was a different Tara Reid at that time. We didn't know any of this stuff.
That's right. It was a different. But yeah, you're right.
He didn't just date her; he was engaged to her.
Yeah. Yes, they were definitely together. But yeah, one of the nicest, humble.
Yes.
It's surprising.
Always was. I met him when he was 12 years old.
Chelsea Handler.
I don't know her really at all, but I think she's very funny.
Seth Meyers.
Great guy, very funny. I sound like an ass kisser, but it's true. I mean, I'm just being honest. I find Seth adorable.
Andy Cohen.
I also find Andy adorable. I really do. I like Andy a lot. I've been on his show a couple times. I've hung out with him a little bit, and he is from St. Louis. My wife is from St. Louis, so we have that like kind of connection.
When you started Jimmy Kimmel Live, you're entering this genre that has worked so well, being done a certain way for a very, very long time. And everybody's discovered it's a bad idea to deviate too far from the format that people like.
Yeah.
How did you want to make it your own? What was at the top of your mind, and I want to do this with my show?
I just looked at it, you know, I came from radio where really most morning shows are basically the same. Usually you'll have like a sidekick and then a news person and the same dynamic. But what makes them different is just giving it a personal spin. And for me, I have my family on the show. My best friend is my band leader. That was my attempt to make it different, even though it's basically a desk and a couch and an audience and a monologue and all that stuff. I thought it was a good idea to not wear a tie, and then the people at ABC, the executives, were really pushing me to wear a tie, which made me not want to wear a tie at all. And then finally, I just put a tie. One day, I put a tie on, and I also I didn't start the show with a typical monologue. I decided I was going to do it like Regis did. I went right to the desk, and I didn't really have any prepared material. I just kind of talk, and it was a lot easier back then, but it was also not very good. So that I changed
I forgot
about
that
a
you
year
started.
and a half in. Yeah, I would just come out and I'd sit down and
Did you have
talk.
anyone to talk to?
I had no one to talk to, although the first year and a half we had a co-host, but I'd bring the co-host out a little bit later. I just kind of, I talked to my uncle, I talked to, eventually Guillermo joined my life, and that was a real hashtag blessing. And I just blabber for 8 minutes and then bring out the guest.
And when did the Matt Damon joke start?
The Matt Damon joke started like early on, really early on. We had a really bad show. It was just like, I mean, to call them D-list celebrities would have been a.
Do you remember who was
upgrade.
on?
I really
night?
don't. I'm not just protecting him. I don't remember who was on, but I was depressed and I was feeling pretty bad about myself. And I just, at the end of the show, I was like, I want to apologize to Matt Damon. We ran out of time. It was just the first A-list star I could think of.
Apologies to Matt Damon. We ran out of time. Matt Damon, apologies. We ran out of time. Unfortunately, we are totally out of time.
Did you know him before
No, I
this?
never met him.
Really?
Yeah, no, I never met him. And
I always just assumed that you'd been friends before that or something.
No. I didn't have any friends like that at that time. If I had, he would have been on the show, you know. And in fact, I met Ben Affleck for the first time when we shot the I'm f***ing Ben Affleck video, which was my response. I didn't know him either. And, Yeah, that's really like, Matt Damon early on, people started asking him, why is Jimmy Kimmel bumping you every night? And he had his publicist call and say like, hey, that's funny, don't stop doing that. And I was like, really? Okay, all right, I'll keep doing it. And then it started to get like, it's cumbersome, I was like, I've done this now 85 nights in a row, like nobody knows what I'm talking about.
But it's become like one of the one of the longest running gags for sure.
It has to be the
in
longest
TV
running
history.
gag. Yeah. It has to be. Yeah, it is remarkable that it's still running, but it does still seem to be running.
It was funny because you were dating at the time, Sarah Silverman. Did she tell you she was going to make this video? I'm f***ing Matt Damon?
No, it was a surprise. It was a surprise for my 40th birthday, and then it turned out the writer's strike happened, and we didn't have a show on my 40th birthday, so she just kind of brought it to me once the writer's strike was over. She was a guest on the show, and she's like, I have a surprise for you. It's, I think, one of our anniversary shows, and I hadn't seen 1 second of it, which is kind of funny. Probably the single most successful thing we've ever done on the show. I had absolutely nothing to do with it.
I'm Matt Damon.
She's Matt Damon.
I mean, I have so much to do with every single thing on this show. I mean, there's not it's not a piece of wallpaper that goes on the wall without me looking at it, and that was done completely without my my participation.
That's why you had to break up.
Probably. It's what drove us apart.
And then, was it tough to get Ben Affleck to do the...
No, it wasn't tough at all.
I'm Ben Affleck.
In fact, as I recall, Jennifer Garner came up with the idea. We were already thinking about it. It made sense. But she kind of thought it would be funny and was talking to Harrison Ford about it at a dinner. I didn't know either one of them, really. Jennifer had been on the show, and Harrison Ford had never been on the show. And Harrison Ford was tickled by the idea and said, well, I'd like to be in that. And then when, because originally I thought, well, it'll just be me and Ben Affleck. But when Harrison Ford said he might want to be a part of it, we decided to make it more like We Are the World and bring all these celebrities in. And, the rest is internet history, I guess.
When did Kids Table start?
Kids Table wasn't even a thing. It was like a bit we did twice, I think, and and it turned into a big commotion. With that was one of the things that it was one of the darkest times, because I still do feel like that was completely misunderstood.
Well, one of the kids made a joke about China. That's what you're talking about.
A 6-year-old boy said something, and it upset a lot of people who saw an edited version that was circulating around the internet, and it was just hard to kind of put that cat back in the bag once it was out.
There have been there was one other time, not even on your show, where you said something about Detroit burning down. That got you in trouble.
Yeah.
That Kids Table moment.
We almost got canceled after the Detroit thing.
Yeah, it was bad.
We did. Yeah, it was bad. Yeah.
In both of those instances, you apologized.
Yes.
And to a comedian, apologizing for a joke it's almost like telling you to sprout a pair of wings and fly around.
Yeah.
It does not come naturally.
You have to understand, though, I've been apologizing for things for a really long time, not just professionally, but in my personal life as well. On the radio, I've had the radio is a great preparation for a series of apologies. I mean, there'll probably be 9 more before I hang it up. But it's just one of those things that sometimes you feel like it has to be done.
Is it, when do you know it has to be done?
I'm not arrogant enough to think that I should never apologize for anything. I mean, there are times where I do feel like there have been times in my life and in my career where, I remember one time in particular when I was on Ben Steins Money, where I made a very insulting joke to a man who was a contestant on the show that it haunts me to this day. I mean, he was he's just a fat guy, and I made fun of him, and he didn't take it well, and it was a bummer, and it made an impact on me, and it really kind of taught me a lesson. It's like, oh yeah, these are people. This is not all just about you getting a laugh. Calm down and stop ripping through people.
So at some point, if enough people are upset, you realize they may have a reason.
Well, not necessarily. There's a lot of stupid people out there.
The mean tweets, I just have to, the people who book the show and the producers, when someone here, probably in this room, said, why don't we...
My wife actually came up with
Oh, she
that
did?
idea. Yeah. I was sitting at a table with my wife and our friend Kelly Oxford, who's very popular on Twitter, she writes, and she was reading some terrible things. We just had our laptops out, you know, a very social dinner, and she was reading some terrible things that people had written about her, and I wanted to make her feel better. I was like, oh really? Well, listen to this. And when we started going back and forth, and Molly said, oh, this would be great for the show. We should get people to read the things.
Was she working at the show at the time?
My wife is currently, yeah, she's the head writer on the show.
She's still the head writer. There was a period of time when she wasn't working.
No, she's.
Oh, had she all through everything?
She joined us like after the first year, and she kind of worked her way, and yeah, but she's been here for almost since the beginning.
Oh, there's been no. Sorry, I thought that there was a
No,
moment where she was. But
this is not about her; it's about me.
Exactly. Who cares?
Yeah, right.
So, but among the bookers, was there anybody nervous to ask celebrities to read mean tweets about themselves?
Well, the publicists, everything goes through publicists, as you know. And some of them still don't quite understand or get it, which is crazy to me. I mean, I have a few friends who are celebrities who have said to me, you know, I have to tell you, I'm a little bit disappointed that I've never been asked to read mean tweets. And then I sit there and I grit my teeth because I know that we've asked them 3 times and that their publicist never passed it along to them because of some insane paranoia or whatever reason they have. I have no idea, but most of the celebrities love it, and most of them will go like, don't you have anything meaner, you know? But every once in a while, I'm not necessarily involved in that transaction, but every once in a while, I think things are deemed to be too harsh.
What's the worst? What's the meanest tweet that anyone ever said about you? What were you reading at the dinner table that night?
Boy, I mean, there are a lot of them. I have a new policy where I just block people if they write something mean about me, and then I don't have to deal with it because I do sometimes take it to heart. And, you know, sometimes like they notice things about your body or like just things you do, little horrible things that are the kinds of things that you really like notice about your mom or dad, and they bother you.
Ooh,
you know, like, oh, he has a tendency to put his hands in this way or whatever, and it makes me very self-conscious. I can't really think of one specifically, but if we took a quick tour through the internet, we would find many of them, I'm sure.
Do you, you've got, because of your affiliation with ABC, you've got a front row seat to The Bachelor.
Yes, I do. You know, sometimes I know too much.
You know a lot.
I do.
I'm always impressed at how much you know about a show that if you didn't have to, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be watching.
This should not impress you. This should depress you. This is something that you should take pity. Sometimes I realize how many hours of my life. I could probably speak another language if I devoted that time that I've spent on The Bachelor to Spanish, for instance.
I'm the editor of People. I've spent a lot of time on The Bachelor, and I'm just trying to make myself feel better about myself.
You really should drown yourself.
I really should. Do you have a favorite Bachelor?
My favorite Bachelor, well, I like Chris, the farmer. He was a nice guy. We keep in touch.
Prince Farming?
Yes, Prince Farming. I thought that was the best nickname they ever gave anybody. Most of them are pretty nice guys. Bob Guinea I played poker with, and we had we played poker together a few times.
Was there a particular one who was really tough to interview or not fun on the show?
Yeah, Juan Pablo was.
Oh, he was terrible.
Yeah, seemed unpleasant. Most of them are pretty. You know, they're kind of vetted to be charming
right.
and all of those things. And I find that I really don't mind interviewing those people. I'm interested in the process because it's so artificial, it's so unnatural, and I always want to know. Like, it's like you've made out with like 15 girls, and now you've picked one, and you guys are hiding in a bunker somewhere, watching the show and watching. And how can that? I mean, I'm surprised as many of them have stayed together as they have, and that's not many.
There's not many. It's fascinating. They're trying so hard to convince themselves that they have found true love.
Yeah, and they probably believe it at that time.
At that point. Yeah.
But it's really more like summer camp than anything.
When you met Molly on
Yeah.
the show, did you know her before she started working on the show?
No, I didn't.
And so you started dating. At some
Yeah,
point.
she worked here for a long time before we dated. And that's not just like one of those stories, but no. Yeah, in fact, I really didn't even know her. We have two buildings, as you know. We're in one, and they're over in the other one. And she was an assistant to our executive producer, so I didn't really have much interaction with her until she became a writer's assistant. She started writing a little something every day, as the writer's assistants will do, and I started noticing that there was good material, and then we decided to promote her to be a writer. Our head writer, Steve O'Donnell, and me, and then when Steve decided to leave, we made Molly and another guy, Gary Greenberg, the co-head writers, and Molly is still in that position.
When the relationship first started, did you have to keep it a secret for a while?
Yeah, because we wanted to make sure it was something before. And then it was a weird thing, like that whole thing with Letterman happened, like just as we started, I don't know, we'd been openly dating for like a few months, and then all of a sudden it became like it was like some scandal or something. And, tabloids started showing up and photographing me on my balcony. And it was unpleasant, especially for her, because she was totally
She did not sign up for that.
Yeah, she didn't sign up for that. But yeah, and yet she did.
And yet she did. And she's also, one of the things that people love about the show is the pranks that are done that she's part of.
Yeah.
When they like come into your house and wake you up
Yeah.
at night. Those are always great.
Yeah, she definitely facilitates that for the show, which is fine. You know what the truth is? I really don't mind it because, first of all, I'm a heavy sleeper, and so Rihanna or Britney Spears burst into my bedroom, you would be amazed at how quickly I am back in a sound sleep after they leave. I'm telling you, if it's more than 6 minutes, I'd be surprised.
So Rihanna was the first, and then, now they've done it twice.
Yeah.
On April 1st.
Well, the first one was on April 1st. Yeah, the second one was.
And the second one was later. So it could be any night of the year.
Yeah. Now I would be ready on April 1st. Although I don't know what I would even do if I was ready. I guess maybe not wear my stupid mouth guard.
Sleep on the couch in a suit.
Yeah, sleep on the couch and fully dressed.
What was it like, though, to be a heavy sleeper and you wake up, and what, in your mind, what do you remember of looking up and Britney Spears is writhing on this side of the bed, and then two guys are kind of grinding over your face right on top of you?
Well, you know what's weird is that, you might think you'd think it was a dream or, whatever, but both times when Rihanna was in my bedroom and when Britney Spears came, there were dancers and lights and like all this crazy stuff. Both times, my brother is a director on the show. Both times, for some reason, all I could focus on was that my brother was in my bedroom. And I was just like looking at him, and there was all this commotion going around to the side, but I was aware, and then, but it was hard for me that was what I was most focused on. I don't know, maybe it was the most familiar face in the room or something.
Or just horrible that your brother was in your bedroom.
Yeah, right. Well,
who knows?
That is weird. He's too old to be coming into my bedroom.
You now have a 2-year-old, you and Molly.
What?
She's
Oh my
2,
God.
right? Just like
That's what that
2.
person is. Yeah, she's
Just
over
turned-
2. Yeah, she turned 2 on July 10th.
And what is best thing about a 2-year-old, worst thing about a 2-year-old?
Everything's great about it. Even the bad things are great. It's, when I come home, the level of excitement is something that you really can only get from a pet. She goes crazy. And of course, she screams when I leave for work every day, which that's the worst part of it. Daddy, please don't. It's just like I have to go to work. She doesn't understand this, and but she's great, and we're potty training her right now. And she has, maybe this is some kind of karmic punishment for my time on the Man Show, but she wants to take her potty on the trampoline, and she will only go to the potty on the trampoline, which is insane. But that's her. She's a weird kid.
And you have 2 older kids from your first marriage.
Yes.
They are.
My son works here. My daughter is an artist, and she lives here in LA as well.
So they are 20. They're in their 20s.
My daughter Katie will be 25 on Sunday, and my son Kevin will be 23 next month. So I was a very young dad, and now I'm an old dad.
How is Jane's childhood different than theirs?
Jane is rich. First of all, they were not rich. Jane is.
Are they like, oh, this kid?
No, they can't get enough of her. And she has them, which is a big difference. I mean, it's almost like having more parents. My daughter came over this morning, my older daughter, and usually there's a tantrum when I go into work, but once my daughter was there, she couldn't care less about me. So that's great. And for my kids, my kids were on Crank Yankers. They used to make crank calls on Crank Yankers, so they got a little taste of that early on. And for me, I thought it was funny to have little children calling and screwing with people. But they're both, my daughter's very funny. She's makes very funny artwork. She went to art school in Chicago. My son's very funny. He's writing comedy bits with his friends, and they make videos and these little series for the internet, and I enjoy watching that.
How are you different as a father now than you were 25 years ago?
I'm more patient. I'm more confident. I'm less stressed because I didn't make any money when I was in radio, and I got fired a lot, and that's, it's stressful enough to get fired and have to move to another town, but when you have little kids, it's even more stressful. So it's easier this time around, and I'm glad because I'm old and I'm busy.
Fill in the blank. It's called the Cagle exercise.
Okay.
Close friends describe me as
a great gift giver. I am a very good gift giver. I'm sure they have nasty things that they say about me too, but that's what they share.
Strangers describe me as
strangers describe me. Well, I don't know how I would know what strangers.
Through their mean
they're
tweets.
Strangers.
They're mean tweets.
Yeah.
Only I know that I am.
Only I know that I am very shy. Well, maybe there are a few other people, my parents and stuff like that, but generally I'm shy, and being well known helps me with that.
The song that always makes me dance.
Into the Groove by Madonna.
The movie I've seen the most times is?
Probably either Broadway Danny Rose by Woody Allen, or a movie nobody other than me and a few other of my friends have seen, The One and Only, which Carl Reiner directed and stars Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler.
And, well, I guess you too, yeah.
It may be heresy, but blank is overrated.
The Rolling Stones.
That's a shocker.
I know it's a shocker, but I saw them at Dodger Stadium, and I don't know. It seems to me like they're doing a lot of old blues songs, and I just guess I missed that. That's not my thing. I love the Beatles. I just think when people compare the Beatles to the Rolling Stones, it's insane, because the Beatles are the greatest band that ever was, and the Rolling Stones, I don't know, maybe I waited too long to see them.
I think I'm really good at.
I'm pretty good at drawing people.
I think I'm really bad at.
Wrapping gifts is my greatest weakness. And it's not for lack of trying, and it frustrates me. I don't know why. I'm just not good at it. I never get it right.
I feel sexiest when I am.
I never really feel sexy, but I guess when, I weigh myself incessantly now. This is my new thing. Sometimes when I get up to go to the bathroom in the night, I'll get on the scale, and my wife thinks I'm insane, but I do like to see a low number, even if the scale is wrong.
I wouldn't be caught dead in a.
Wow, I have so little in the way of dignity that's hard to say. My wife and I had a little fight, and she could not believe it. And I'm not actually in something, but my daughter wanted to put ketchup on her hot dog, and I just said, I just have to put my foot down here. I'm just not going to have a kid that has ketchup on their hot dog, and that's that. And I'm sorry, she can scream all she wants. This is not happening.
That seems reasonable.
I know it's ridiculous, but it's what I'm passionate about.
It's the Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's the Brooklyn coming out.
Definitely.
My greatest extravagance is?
My greatest extravagance is art supplies. I have more art supplies than any Aaron brothers in the world. And I just in the middle of the night, I'll buy like 100 pens online. And I also buy a lot of fly fishing equipment that I really don't need. Otherwise, I don't really have any extravagances. I don't drive expensive cars. I'm pretty reasonable other than in those two areas.
The teacher I'm most grateful for is?
The teacher I'm most grateful for, I had a lot of great teachers. My art teacher, Mrs. Young. You know what? I had a great English teacher named Mrs. Peterson in high school. My probably all-time favorite teacher, and the teacher I was most grateful to, is a guy named Mr. Kempfer. Gary Kempfer is his name. He's still teaching in Las Vegas, and he was my social studies or history or some combination of those two things teacher, and he got a kick out of me, and he didn't treat my jokes in class as if they were some kind of an offense. He treated them as if they were part of making the day fun, and he was funny too. So that's a guy I really like.
I love the smell of
Play-Doh.
I could talk about blank for hours on end.
Fishing, cooking, art.
My recurring nightmare is?
I have an actual recurring nightmare, which is a tidal wave, and I had an experience. I wrote about it for the Huffington Post. A harrowing experience where I found myself on an island in the South Pacific shortly after the earthquake hit Japan, and I told my wife I didn't want to go there because I was worried there was going to be a tidal wave. And sure enough, we got put on tidal wave alert and had to be evacuated to nothing wound up happening, but it was very scary.
I can sum up my life in this bumper sticker.
Do people still have bumper stickers?
They have bumper stickers. And you would use?
I would say my kid is an A student, but he's also a pain in the ass. Me being the kid.
Thank you.
All right. That's it?
You were a good sport.
Oh, that was fun.